Williams.
Mr Speaker, with your indulgence, I'd like to greet the families and the people watching at home. Kia ora na tātou katoa, tōna roto te aro mata o tētua. Mr Speaker, I rise with great pleasure to take a call on this bill. And most of my references will be due to the fact that I do have Cook Islands heritage, born in New Zealand, as Mr Naro had previously stated as well. But I feel very deeply the desire of the people of the Cooks and of Niue and Tokelau that we do the right thing by them with this piece of legislation. Because, Mr Speaker, for me, it's about nationhood. And what is the quality of nationhood? We are members of the realm of New Zealand. We have New Zealand passports. There is a reason that it is important for us to support the countries of the realms, because travelling on New Zealand passports has been one of the most significant reasons our home islands have become depopulated, because of that ability to travel so freely. So in that regard, as the big brother in this context, we have a responsibility to those home islands to support them in their initiatives to ensure that our populations can return home and contribute to those home islands. It's about the quality of our citizenship. To be a New Zealand citizen should be the same regardless of whether you were born in Rarotonga or in Auckland. The quality of the citizenship should be the same. What is it about being New Zealanders? You know, I was born in New Zealand, but I'm very much a Cook Island girl, but I am a New Zealander as well. You travel back to the Cook Islands, they are very much part of the wider context of this nation, and what they have done in terms of their contribution to this country has been extraordinary, and one that should recognise their full rights of citizenship. It was one of the issues that was raised, Mr Speaker, by the contributors and the submitters, that they were saying, what does citizenship mean? What does it mean when we allow our sons and daughters to pay the ultimate price for this country? This country has been supported throughout its primary industry by people from the Cooks and Niue and Tokelau. There's no secret that there are quite large populations of Cook Island people in the Hawke's Bay because they helped with the picking of the fruit. Large populations of Cook Island people in Tokoroa because they have contributed to the forestry industry. People from the Cooks and from the other realm countries have supported the economic development of this country. They've supported and contributed to the culture of New Zealand. Auckland is the largest Pacific city in the world. Where would we be in New Zealand without such festivals as Pacifica and Polyfest, which really show the richness of our country and our heritage? Cook Island people have a special kin relationship with tangata whenua. We have a shared migration history where our history is interwoven with the people of Aotearoa New Zealand over and over and over again. And let's not forget the 500 soldiers who fought under the New Zealand flag in World War I, some of them who perished for this country, and the servicemen and women who currently serve for New Zealand. Now, Labour does support this bill and the proposed changes, but we believe they should go further. We are very supportive of the administrative changes, which means that when you are ready to apply for superannuation, you can do so from the home islands as long as you've met the criteria. We're also very supportive of the fact that you no longer have to return to New Zealand to keep that application and that criteria alive, that's now has had some changes to it, makes it easier for your status to remain active. And, you know, the other changes that have happened, we are very supportive of. But there are a couple of things that we believe that this government actually should take into consideration. This piece of legislation, after going through Select Committee, has come through literally unchanged. So while Mr Naro can talk about what National has done, It has done nothing in terms of listening to those submitters, two of whom were heads of state, has done nothing in terms of listening to them around their major concerns. The major concern is the 5 years after 50. Now, 5 years after 50, when the officials were asked what is the financial contribution going to cost if we remove that clause, what is the financial contribution? 9 to 21 million. In terms of the value of the contribution of the people of the realm to this country, I would say that that is fairly small change, 9 to 21 million. There is also a consideration. One of the submitters said to me, do you realise that if you stay in the Cook Islands for 5 years, that is part of your eligibility criteria to become a citizen of New Zealand? So if you can be resident in the Cooks for 5 years, and that is part of the eligibility criteria to become a citizen of New Zealand, how can you not then have the 5 years after 50, have that be resident in the Cooks? All of the submitters, bar about 2 or 3, that was their key consideration. And what does that mean in terms of what can happen in the home islands? And this is something where, Mr. Niue, I need to correct you on a couple of points you made. One of the points you said was you only need to be resident and present in New Zealand for 10 years after the age of 20. That is incorrect, because this bill clearly states in order to attract 100% of your superannuation and have that ported ported to the Cooks, Niue and Tokelau, you actually have to be resident and present in New Zealand for 20 years. If you are only here for 10 years after that, you only are entitled to 50%. So I think you better actually correct yourself, Mr. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. Alfred, I think you should correct that.
Order.
Alfred.
Mr. Niue or Alfred Niue or something
I'm sorry
like that.
again, Mr. Speaker. I'm getting a little bit emotional about this. The other thing that is really important about the removal of the clause, the 5 years after 50, is that it would encourage people to move to the Cooks earlier. The whole reason we want to look at removing that clause, Mr. Speaker, is because if you are already established in the Cooks as a person, say, in their mid-40s, establishing a business or working in the Cooks, you've got your families organised, then the requirement to come back to New Zealand to do the 5 years after 50 means massive disruption to you. You are already contributing to the home islands, Mr. Speaker, but then you're required to return. We think that that it makes much more sense to be encouraging people to move to the Cooks at a younger age, like many of my cousins have suggested they would do. They have done a lot of work in their careers here and are feeling like they can contribute to their home islands. Mr. Speaker, I realise that I'm just about to finish up my 10-minute call here, but I want to just remind the House that 2 weeks ago there were crosses on the front lawn of Parliament with the names of Cook Island men who fought and who died for this country. For 3 days, those crosses were on the lawn of Parliament. If that is not enough to encourage New Zealand Parliament to support this bill and to support the SOP to remove the 5 years over 50 clause, I don't know what else is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.